Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will be teaching how to draw a basic character design. The first thing I'll get into is the overall shapes. I think the initial sketch is probably the most important part of drawing because it really sets the energy and tone of the picture. You see, for this character, the head is very round with a line here and a curve. That's the basic overall shape. You want to adjust this for like different angles and all that stuff. This is always going to be where the nose is, right in the middle. And I'm going to have it like curved, round, kind of bubbly. If this doesn't come naturally to you, you can always have a circle here and trace over like that. And this is going to be where the lips are. And this is where the eyes are. So you've got that basic shape. And now you'll see this circle is not like accurate anymore. That's not quite where the ear is. It'll be more here. So you've got to really adjust your initial sketch and figure stuff out as you go along. But once you have that part down, the rest is a lot easier. Of course, the expression is very unrefined. The eyebrows are the center of your emotion in drawing emotions because they are so sensitive. For instance, if I erase this and have it point up, now her whole expression has softened a lot. She looks scared and upset. Whereas if I bring this down, she looks tired. If I bring it way down, she's very angry. And I haven't even adjusted any of the other features in her expression, just the eyebrows. So remember that as you're drawing expressions. Right now, I am interested in drawing poses. I think the hand is going to be here. And what I'm doing right now is I am drawing all these foreshortening lines. That is to help show the lines of motion. This is going to be like the center part of the image. And so I really want to express that. I want this part to go forward and everything else to fade into the background. And we'll get into how you can do that farther into this video. So this is where I think her hand is going to be, or both her hands are going to be. And so this square is going to show where I'm putting her shoulders to have that line of motion. The farther her head is down, the more intense the motion looks, because now she's drawn in. At the same time, you don't want her to look too intense because Well, it depends on what you want to draw. For me, I want her to look both confident and intense. If you're looking to make her look scared, you want her to have all the bends inward. That's what people do when they're scared. You go in and try and make yourself smaller. But to really show off your art, you want to try and pull the character out. So what I'm going to do is bring her head up a lot more. She is looking a lot more in control just from that one change. So I'm rounding out her face, and I want her face to be a lot softer than most of my characters. I'll usually have like a pointy chin area, but I'm not going to do that for her. I think if you go like this, then I'm going to have, like you saw with the original, I'll make it that way you can actually see it. With the original shapes, see the kind of circular nose. That's a little different showing it from the front. And of course, since this is anime style, you usually don't put as much emphasis on the nose. But I want it to look very distinctive. Have eyebrows down. I usually don't refine the face until much later, but I wanted to get an idea of like where everything is. So we're gonna have the circles. And that makes the basic overall shape. You'll see her body type is very curvy and muscular. So you use a lot more circles and not squares, but funnels to really emphasize that. You have the cylinder looks a little more like an elongated triangle, or it just has that widening of the top and shrinking of the bottom that really emphasizes the muscular shape and everything. You don't want to do that like too extreme. It depends on like what art style you're going with and how stylized you want it to look. But you'll figure out what you like, what lines appeal to you, and that'll help you a lot. I don't know if I want the other hands to be there. Maybe I just want that one hand. And her other arm is coming back to stabilize her. So I'll have lines of motion in her hair. We're going to see how much movement there is around her through how much movement her hair is going through. So we're going to say there's like a blast of air in front of her that she's trying to stop. Or, you know what I'm saying. She's pulling back from a blast. And hand coming back to stabilize her. So you can really see the emphasis of the motion around her. We'll also have her dress flying about. You'll see like the weight of her dress in how much or how little it moves compared to her hair and everything else around here. Arms right here. And this is an angle I always have trouble with. I'm not sure why I decided to draw it. Because it really needs a lot of foreshortening to look good. And I am not good at that foreshortening. But we're gonna keep trying anyway. If you have an element that you struggle with, it's a good idea to sketch it out several times, but not to linger on it, because you just might change the pose as you get further in, or you might watch a few tutorials and get better at it once you get everything else out of the way. That looks even worse. So what we're going to do is go back to our lines of motion, and we'll add this extra line. This is where we want her hands to kind of shrink to show how far back it is. And I hate that, but we'll get back to that later. What I'll probably do is get several references for that area that I have trouble with. And when I come back and draw it, I will have a lot more of a grasp of where I want to place everything. But right now we're going to just draw the rest of it, clean up the sketch a bit, and I might not even have to draw that hand actually. I could easily hide it behind the dress, which is a lazy move, which most of you shouldn't do, which I shouldn't do. But if worst comes to worst, you can always do that. Merge these two layers together now. And I'm going to lower the opacity. And this will give me something to look at as I clean up the line work. I'm going to move her about until this is an angle that I really like. I think there should be more around her. So I'm going to increase the size. Now, if you have a specific size you need, it is always better to right now at the initial sketch, resize your sketch. But I don't have a particular size I need it to be, so this is what I'm going to do. Here, you can really, you don't want to clean up the line. Don't put too much pressure on how much you're cleaning up the line work right now, because you're still getting the proportions and correcting any errors you might have had in the initial sketch. As you go along, we'll be cleaning up the line work a lot more, so don't worry if it still looks rough, and don't add too many extra details, but do add a little more. Gonna have this curve in your hand. Hands are so full of curves, it will not look right unless there's a ton of overlap. You see I'm doing these circles because I want to have the front of the fingers moving forward and not backwards. And we'll work on that farther along too. I need to cut this in a little bit more to emphasize the curve. What? That might be fine, and I need to pull the pinky in a little more. But again, you can see how rough this sketch is, because we are just figuring out the shapes. And I love drawing online because I can constantly be readjusting the size and adding more extremes to foreshortening as I need to. I will probably want this shoulder to move farther back than the other one to emphasize the motion. So we'll do this. And this gives you an idea of how her torso is turned, so you can add more emphasis where you need to. This is where you'll have like her knee, and you can add extra lines for emphasis or stylize. This, of course, is loosely an oval shape here, but it has this curve. So it's more of a bean shape as you get further along. If the bean shape is too challenging right now, you can always do a simple circle shape and keep refining as we go along. You want to constantly be pulling back and seeing what the overall drawing looks like, because it is very easy to get so focused on the individual details that you get the proportions wrong. So always be checking. And I think her arm goes further back than that. Let's check and see, taking this layer off. I think I made this somewhat too extreme. Okay. Where the thumb is where you will place the most emphasis on motion. The thumb and the index finger are where you have the most expressive motion. So if you get that part right, most everything else is overlooked. this. Still a part of the hand. And that's what was messing me up. Often you may want to move the hand and the arm separate from one another, so the proportions of one isn't confusing the other. And this is still messy, because this is another part that I didn't have right in the initial sketch. So it'll take some extra work to get right here. But remember to be patient with yourself, because you're daring to do something that you aren't especially good at yet, which means you will learn to get good at it. And that is essentially very brave. Doesn't look right, but we'll keep going and keep improving. Those shadows in the corner here. Work with these lines to have the proper shape. Eyes are very expressive, very sensitive to various changes. So you really want to spend a little extra time on them to really hone in the expression you want. The eyes do not need to look exactly the same from one side to the other. But if it helps you to copy and paste first few times you're trying, that is great. And okay, so this needs to curve up a little bit, and okay, the thickness needs to be here and not over the whole thing, because you want to emphasize that her eye is very widened. I'm gonna pull up a reference of the original sketch that included this character so you can see what I'm doing. what the final product should look like. So that is the character I'm drawing right now. And I'm going to check and make sure I'm drawing her eyes right. See, we have this. I'll do it with a red pen or bright pink. We have this triangular shape that is very thin. So that's what eye normally looks like. And you see how wide it is here. So we're really going to emphasize that. And her eyebrows are fairly thick. I'm going to be thickening them here, like so. Add this thinness to really emphasize the curves. The lower the eyebrows are, the more intense the emotion, the more extreme your curves are, the more intense you make the image. She has some thickness for her lips, which can be hard to properly express when you're showing intense emotions. So it is always better to sacrifice aesthetic for the expressive value. So if you have a character with thick lips and you can't get that, worry more about how you can show the extremity of emotion. I don't know why I want to do teeth. It kind of looks cool. You can always play with the angle to see what makes it more extreme and expressive. Now, of course, while I'm talking about how expressive and extreme things are, you don't want to do this for every drawing. You really want to be in control of how expressive and how extreme an emotion is at any given point. Some pictures are expressed better with subdued emotions, some with more extreme emotion. This one I wanted to really show off extreme angles, so I went with extreme motion. You do not necessarily want to do that. It is very subjective to your taste and to what you're trying to express in the drawing. Now you'll see, we're not drawing every dread she has. Right now we're drawing the ones that place the most emphasis on motion. And we're trying to make that as extreme as possible. Now you'll see, we don't give the same emphasis to every lock of hair. We have a very distinctive flow of motion, where more emphasis is placed here on this outward motion and on this outward motion, with smaller expressive motions all around to add more emphasis to our key points. So you cannot have the same level of expressiveness in every segment of a picture. It has to work in a hierarchy for it to really be effective. And you're going to see this is not moving as much as the hair. We're trying to express extra weight for the clothes. because it tries to come up and the bottom still has this inward motion, and that expresses the weight of the cloth. I'm not sure what she's wearing yet. I haven't finalized what her costume is, but we'll just go with that for now. We want this to be a little more extreme, so I will have this curve, not this curve, go up a little. So we're still expressing the weight, but we're showing more force has been applied. And now we'll have outside emphasis with wind lines and kind of wispy lines that will indicate debris and the activation of magical powers. So we're gonna have a lot of squigglies. I know they look random, but we're framing the picture. You see, we're gonna have more points of emphasis here, cutting in here, and going here. I may want to put that on a separate layer so I don't mess up everything else I've been working on and can move it independently. So we'll just make another layer real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and have this shading here to emphasize the curve. We're not going to actually do anything with this at the moment, the shading, but it will be a good guide for later. Now, don't need the original sketch lines anymore. I think she might have gauntlets that she's wearing. So that will make her hands bigger and rounder. It's going to really be her magic that's enhancing that. And again, we're using lines of motion to add emphasis. You won't really see it with how cluttered this is. So we're gonna hide several of these layers and focus on refining this. Shimmy.